Avant-garde is a term in painting and sculpture that's outmoded. My theory is it's not outmoded in the durational arts because there was no money. So painting and sculpture, avant-garde means at the front, it's a military term. It meant the new, the forward advanced troops even. And in painting and sculpture by the 30s, it didn't make sense. There was so much money, there was a whole world of purchaser and consumers beginning, certainly by post-World War II. But in the durational arts, and by those I mean film, poetry, dance, music, there was really nothing to purchase. In the avant-garde, we're not talking pop music and I'm not talking Hollywood, but in the more experimental modes, who was going to buy it? Nobody. And so I think it continued longer, the avant-garde film, the avant-garde music, avant-garde dance, avant-garde poetry. So I don't know if I love the term avant-garde, but we're always struggling to find the right term. Is it underground? Is it avant-garde? Is it experimental? For me, what all those terms really are referencing is something that raises the level of consciousness. I have a more open view than some. Some would insist if it doesn't come out of Brakhage or Godard maybe, it's not avant-garde, it's not experimental. But for me, I'm actually interested in work that the audience does not fall into, that an audience stays aware. Because I think image in our time, maybe always, but certainly in our time, is a determinant. It determines political figures and futures of countries, how people look, how they get caught on film, and also how we dress and how we love, how we move our body is from photographic and filmic image. So it behooves us, it's really important that we understand the image and that we break the image, that we show how it's made, that we show the interface, we show the production of the image. We show that the image is not solid, that it's actually insubstantial, and that, or that it could be more prismatic, that it could have other points of view, that it's not just a story where you sit and you take it in with your eyes closed or your eyes open, but you just take it in passively like food, and then you go out and you say, oh, great. I want to be looking at a film that when I walk outside, I see the world differently. Sure. Well, one is Coppola with The Conversation, which is a film from the 70s. And I still show it in my classes, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant about sound. It's brilliant with the camera movement. It's reflexive. It shows how sound is edited. So Coppola definitely, and Coppola knows George Kuchar. He's given money to the Cinematheque in the Pacific Film Archives, so he's pretty known. But I like Anderson, who did Boogie Nights. He's not always experimental, but I think Boogie Nights was a great film in terms of what it was looking at. Who else do I think? Oh, well, I think David Lynch is amazing. I think Mulholland Drive is, it's even fragments because, and interestingly, of course, for David Lynch, it's like he didn't get the money to finish the project, so he took he was doing a 10-piece, as I understood, 10-piece TV show, and he took all the little bits that he had shot because they canceled on him, and he pulled them together to make Mulholland Drive, and it's just like an experimental film. It's so fragmentary. So I think he's another that's fantastic. I actually think Gus Van Sant is very interesting, and intriguingly, Gus Van Sant has begun to edit his own work, just like Coppola had to begin to edit his own work. I think once directors start putting their hands on the celluloid or the digital, the work starts to become more personal and more interesting. So with Gus Van Sant, if you look at his trilogy Elephant and the one on the musician who killed himself, I forget the title. And in Elephant, he begins to edit at the end of it. And it's actually very awkward editing. He's kind of doing this weird angles. But by the time he gets to, what's it called, Parallel, it's the one on the skateboarder. Paradox. it's the name of Escape Park. Paradox Park, or it's not Paranoid Park. It's brilliant because what he does there, I apologize, stranger audience, for not remembering the name of the film, but in it, he tells the same story 3 different times from 3 different points of view. And it's clearly that his editing that began with Elephant Man, or the Elephant film rather, starts to play out. And it's just a brilliant piece, and it reminds me of Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, which is also about 3 parallel stories of the same event. So, you know, I think Gus Van Sant is very intriguing. And I think, who else? Todd Haynes. I think the Bob Dylan film is another film that is, you know, playing a very conscious, and Todd Haynes does know all experimental work. He studied at Brown, he's seen my films, he's written about my films early on, and, you know, so he's really pushing some of the borders. What else? Actually, one of my students, Lance Accord, who shot for Coppola's daughter, Lost in Translation. He also shot, what is it, Buffalo, the guy who did Brown Bunny. He shot Buffalo 66, it was his first feature, and he had worked as an advertising director for 10 years after he graduated San Francisco Art Institute. And actually, if you look at Buffalo 66, you can see Lance Accord is doing all these experimental camera moves that he learned, you know, in college at the San Francisco Art Institute. And I think that's why the film is so interesting. So yeah, I think there's a little percolating of experimental because more experimental filmmakers are teaching in the film schools, and so it's moving through the fields. Who else? There's a bunch of people in California that I think are also interesting, but those are some of the people that I'm always intrigued to watch their work, to see what happens. And Coppola also, Cape Fear. The opening of Cape Fear is, I mean, most of it's pretty straightforward, but the opening of Cape Fear is almost a dedication to Brakhage. It's in negative. It opens with these negative images, which is sort of like what Brakhage had been doing. So there's a lot of referencing. I wish there was more. Yeah, that's a good one for me because I wasn't there, but I was told the audience got up and went back to the projector to tear my film off the projector. That was one. And the other one that I experienced was, one time a guy got up, he stood up, he said, "This is not film," and he walked out. And I think in both cases it's because I was doing something that is not normal, and I think it's actually interesting that film has the power to make people crazy. When you think about it, if I go into a museum, there'll be who's the German guy who there's a German artist who famously would just do blood and fat and felt. The name is at the tip of my tongue, and I watched all these people just look at these piles of felt and fat, and they didn't think anything of it. They just kept walking and talking. And I thought, it's so interesting. Film makes people crazier. It challenges people. I think it's double reasons. I think one, that mostly there's only Hollywood. It's kind of, Hollywood is a monopoly. You know, Hollywood and documentaries from TV are a monopoly. So anything else seems really weird to people. It's outside their experience. So that's one reason. But I think the other reason is that movies touch us so deeply. They're close, you know, the classic interpretation, they're closer to the real, so that they touch people and people get angry and get upset if the world you show is not the way they imagine the world. And in fact, I think, you know, I think it's interesting that even poetry is more allowed than experimental film. Experimental film, people want to crush. They get really angry at. And I think it's to the power of the film medium itself and to the narrowness of people's experience of other ways to be. In fact, I think sometimes, since everybody's different, if everybody could do the film that's in their head, I think everybody would go crazy, you know? This is, yeah, there is some of my movies in a really small little thing are on Pen Sound, P-E-N-N-S-O-U-N-D. It's mostly a poetry, you know, website, but they have some of my writing, and they have 4 of my films uploaded. They're very well uploaded. Then on Ubu, not in good quality, they have 3 of my films, but they were uploaded kind of off the web, off of a stolen VHS. So it's not such good quality. And then I have a bunch of Vimeos, but I usually don't publicize. I don't make them free. And I have to say, I don't know what to do there. I've been offered to put one of my films, Mayhem, online out of a German group, but it will be free into the public. And I don't know what to do, because I used to make some money on distribution of my films, and now I'm making less and less because nobody wants to rent 16mm, or they've gotten a DVD that they're now showing in their classes instead of renting my film. And it's a problem I think all of us face. Do we make it free so more people see it and you get a bigger audience? Or do you make it rarer and try to get the money? And I don't know the answer. I can't advise myself. I'm in a question mark there, because I actually could use some of the money for the next film, and yet on the other hand, am I losing audience or options that where somebody sees the film? I mean, nobody's going to see the film and give me money, so you know that's not going to happen. It's a hard call. I think it's a fantastic festival. What I really love about it is I love this building. I like the 2 theaters, the small and the large theater. I've seen some wonderful films, but what I really am loving is the energy. The audiences are large. They're often young. I've only had 1 show here so far. It was Full House. Wonderful pleasure. I hope all 4 of the shows are like that. I just did a master class that was also Full House, which was fantastic. And so it's, you know, it's very exciting to see an enthusiastic audience for one's own work. But I've also been looking at work and very interested in Sniadeki's film. And then I saw The Knifing, a Greek film. I'd never even heard of the maker. It was very disturbing, but very beautiful. I had some questions, but still great to see. It stuck with me.